What is up, my Lumpias? It's Vanessa Tillnerova and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This topic is a little bit personal for me because we are going to talk about planning a wedding during this global pandemic. Normally, when you get engaged, it's a very exciting time. You start to plan your wedding. But now, with everything that's happening, that's not the case. It's totally different and not exciting anymore. So this video is just gonna go through the tips if you're newly engaged or already planning your wedding and you don't know where to start or what to do. This is just some tips that I personally did. Let's jump into it. If there's certain topics I didn't cover in this video, please ask them down below and I will answer them as best as I can. Now with the pandemic, a lot of brides, I'm in support groups on social medias, literally they say the fun of planning a wedding has been sucked out of them. They are just more worried than anything now and they just want to get it over with. No one thought that this pandemic would go for so long. It's been almost a year since the world shut down. It just proves that anything can happen and we just gotta roll with the punches. So yeah, I hope this helps you in wedding planning during this pandemic. First thing that you do is you pick a date. Originally, Ash and I, our date was going to be in September, but you should have backup dates. And that's simply because there's always a difference in cost if you're booking in the summertime or the fall as opposed to the winter / early spring. Have some backup dates in mind in case your number one date that you want isn't available. Pick a date and pick a number of guests that you're thinking about inviting. In terms of guests, I think it's good to have like a range because depending on the venue, you might not have enough guests or you have too many guests. A lot of people say you should plan a budget. I didn't plan a budget. You're probably gonna go over your budget. Some people are really good at following it. Personally, for me, I'm not, but I think it's good to be mindful of how much you're spending. So I would say to go to a wedding show. That's very important. Before the whole shutdown of the world, I went to 3 wedding shows in person, which is great, but I know that's not possible right now, but a lot of wedding shows, they're actually doing virtual expos. I know it's not the same as going to different booths and walking past them and seeing everything that's tangible, and I think it still helps because then you start to see the range of how much something is because you could research one vendor and they could be in the high end. So I think it's just good to shop around, figure out how much you're willing to spend for a certain vendor, and you'll even discover different types of vendors, whether it's for entertainment for the reception, details that you have never even thought of before. There's all these different ideas and you get those ideas from a wedding show, so highly recommend that you do that. Another thing is that if you're going to wedding shows, I recommend that you have a wedding email strictly for your wedding stuff. I created one before I started going to wedding shows when the vendors are emailing you all their promo instead of your regular email getting hijacked with wedding promo. At least it all goes to your wedding email. So after you're married, you don't need to worry about these vendors anymore. But okay, so in terms of the wedding book, here's the one I got. It works great. To be honest, I'm not following this religiously, but I recommend for whatever you're spending on your wedding to have it in a folder or on an Excel spreadsheet or something because you need to keep in mind how much you're spending for the wedding. I personally find that you don't really know how much you're spending until you write it down on paper. Kind of have like an idea, but it's good to write it down. As well, if you get contracts from any of your major vendors, it's just good to have it all in one place so you know how much money you owe right before your wedding because all vendors, even your venue, they need to be paid up for your wedding. So just keep that in mind. So now that you kind of have a theme going on after going to some virtual wedding shows or in-person wedding shows, whatever's allowed, now you get to go venue shopping. You can have literally a blank room and you can make it into the theme that you want. It's just, again, how many vendors you want to have, how much you're willing to spend. Personally, for myself and Mitch, when we went wedding venue shopping, literally it was me that was doing all the research, so just saying. I actually looked at 7 wedding venues in the span of a weekend. I know. I told people how many venues we looked at, they thought it was nuts, especially in one weekend. It's a lot, and they were all over the place. We didn't look at just GTA Toronto because Toronto, it's expensive. Our theme is a very rustic, farmhouse chic type. That's very us, so that's what we were looking for. We looked everywhere and we looked at 7 different ones in different places. I highly recommend that you research different venues. One website that helped me in Ontario was Wedding Wire. They have literally a multitude of different vendors. Not all the vendors are on there, but they have a lot of them and they have reviews of them. So I highly recommend that you do that. At the same time, you might find a venue that's not necessarily on a website. So it's good to research and figure that out and kind of set up appointments and try to book them as close as possible. We booked it within a span of a weekend, and I did that because I didn't want to space them out too much because then we'll forget about what the other venue was like. So kind of book them as close together as possible so it's easier to compare. And you can choose which one works for you and your significant other for your wedding. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about venues, but there are a couple of tips that I personally had. One thing is that there are things that you do need to think about when you go to a venue, but don't judge a book by its cover for the venue, because the venue that we ended up choosing, when we arrived, Mitch was like, there's no way we can afford this venue. They treated us like royalty there. And he was just like, yeah, we can't afford this venue. And we ended up getting the venue because the pricing isn't as bad as we thought it was. Pretty much everything was included. Ceremony was included, an officiant was included. We didn't need limo, even for photography. We didn't need to do any permits for taking pictures. It just made sense for us for that venue. So don't judge a book by its cover. If you see something that's like literally a castle somewhere and you're like, oh my god, I can't afford that, well, you never know until you go and see the cost. One example of a venue we saw was a farmhouse, and it was very nice. We really liked it, but then we got the pricing sheet. And literally, it was just the cost of venue and food. It was like $40,000 Canadian. And by the way, for our number of guests, it's like 150 guests. I'm like, well, that's not happening. You have to think about what you want and what's important to you and where you're willing to spend your money. For a wedding venue too, I recommend Googling a wedding venue checklist sheet. I brought them to the venues. I didn't necessarily religiously read it and check everything off, but it really gave me an idea of things that I needed to think about and ask when we're at the venue. Because when you're at the venue, the salesperson literally makes it sound amazing, but then when you ask the right questions, you start to get the real extra cost. One thing, for example, was charger plates. I was like, what is that? The charger plates are literally the plate under the dinner plate to make it look fancier and snazzy. It could literally range from whatever comes with the venue, or it might not even come with the cost of the venue. And if you want a certain color or a certain, I don't know, look, then the price increases, and that's per person. So it could just be like $3 per charger plate, but if you have 200 people, that is $600 just for the plate underneath the dinner plate. So literally Google some sort of checklist sheet and then we'll help you. Say you booked your venue. Now you need to think about what you're wearing for your wedding. For most brides, it's a dress. It can even be a pantsuit, it might even be a suit, like whatever you're comfortable with. But you need to get whatever you're wearing for your wedding, because that takes a lot of time for it to ship. Some places it might be quick, but for the most part, it takes a long time for shipping. And I recommend that you go dress shopping after you book your venue, because once you have the venue, you kind of have the theme and the venue in mind when you're picking your dress. Say you're in a farmhouse and you have like a ball gown like for a castle, and you're just gonna be like, well, this doesn't match my venue. Or when I went dress shopping, my bridesmaids, my family, they were thinking about the venue, and what I ended up picking, it matches the venue perfectly. Another tip for dress shopping is once you get a dress, unless it fits you perfectly and you're the right height, you'll have to get alterations done, and alterations are extra. So if you find a boutique that maybe includes it, that's awesome. Otherwise, it will cost extra. Another tip for dress shopping is that you need to be open-minded. When I went dress shopping, I had a certain thing in mind, and what I ended up getting was totally opposite and totally nothing I expected for my dress. Really try every style on, because that's how you really get to see what you like and don't like. You'll know when you get the dress. I didn't think I would get that feeling, but I did, especially like when I went with my sisters in particular. They bawled their eyes out, and I'm like, okay, this is a dress. But dress shopping, a lot of dress stores now, they're doing virtual appointments. I don't know how that works, but some brides and support groups have said they found their dress via virtual appointments. So try it. You might just find your dress. The next step is major vendors. With the pandemic going on, what ended up happening is I got the venue booked, my dress ordered right before literally everything closed. When it came to major vendors, honestly, I kept waiting. Anyone that's booking and is a little bit afraid to book, what I recommend is that when you're booking, just ask them about if we had to move our date, what would happen to our deposit? How would that work? What if you're not available for a new date? Have that in your contract. That's what we did before booking and signing a contract, and you have that clause in there. Okay, save the dates. What I did for my save the date, a lot of people print them out and send them. I think during this time with the pandemic, what I think is best is to save money on that and to create one online. Either you can do it yourself. There's plenty of websites that have free templates for you to create a save the date and just literally send it out in an email. If you ever have to change the date, at least you have an email version that you can change instead of hiring an invitation company to do that for you. That's just extra cost that you kind of want to save money on. So a lot of my guests have asked me about what I'm doing in terms of ceremony. Are you going to do a live stream? This live stream is something very new. That was something we thought about because I have family overseas that were supposed to come to the wedding, and obviously that's not going to happen. Mitch had family in the States that were supposed to come, so that's, again, not happening. We were thinking of doing a live stream. So for live stream, there are two options. You can have guests do it for you, like via their phone, or if you have such a small guest count, you want everyone to enjoy the wedding and not really give someone a job to do unless they're okay with it. But the second thing also is the audio. It's a phone, they might not necessarily hear. So we were looking into a second option, which was hiring a company. The only problem with that, it's actually pretty expensive. If we had to postpone our wedding to another year when everyone can come, we would lose our deposit, non-refundable. They would move it to another date, but by that time, I'm guessing everyone could come, so what's the point? For us, what we're doing is we're going to send our wedding video. We're gonna have our whole ceremony filmed, speeches at the reception, etc. We'll send that out to everyone. So now you're probably wondering, where am I in the planning process? 3-month countdown to the wedding. This is what I have done and what major things I still need to do. I got all my vendors booked. I asked all the vendors about like deposits, how it works, if we get our money back, etc. All my vendors said if they're not available for a new date, we get our money back. So I did get the bridal gifts. Mitch still needs to get his groomsmen gifts. We booked accommodations for our bridal party the night before. I got the wedding favors already. I got the guest book all done. In terms of decor, I think I got all the decor done. But again, with what's happening right now, I'm not sure how many guests we can have. I have enough decor for 50 people. And again, for our venue, they're spacing out the tables. So we're just trying to figure that part out right now. What am I doing with my hands? But here are some things that I need to do still. So first, I need to do my wedding dress fitting. Ontario, we're under a second lockdown, so I have to wait, which is fine, because now I can exercise and get a little skinnier for the wedding. I'm gonna do that in March. I ordered my invitations. I made them, I'm ordering them off of Vistaprint, and they were awesome to deal with. But I recommend that if you're making your own invites. I'm doing a wedding website. I need to finish that up before I actually send out invites. We need to get Mitch's suit. He hasn't gotten it yet and everything's closed, so as soon as everything opens, we're gonna go and get that done so we can tell his groomsmen what color pants to get. But for the most part, I think we're pretty much set. It's just kind of like the unknown of how many guests we can have. Another question I've gotten a lot, and I'm pretty sure many couples gotten this question, is they're asking, what's gonna happen for your wedding? Literally everyone asking. Just be ready for that. But you know what? At the end of the day, it is your day. So depending whatever you want to do, whether it's you want everyone there to be dancing, be close together, you know, like what was in 2019, then move it by all means. Personally, for Mitch and I, we want to get married. That's what's important to us. We're just hoping that we can have as many guests as possible. So again, we're just waiting. We're gonna see. My last tip is just to stay positive as possible. I recommend that you join groups of other brides. It just helps to have that positivity and get some tips from other brides and what they've done. It's a good place for you to like rant out your feelings, and you're not alone in this. There's a lot of us going through this right now, and everything will fall into place eventually. And that concludes my little wedding chat. I hope hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it really gave you some tips on planning a wedding or moving your wedding. Again, if there's anything I didn't cover or you had any questions about, don't forget to comment them down below and I will answer your questions as best as I can. If you liked it, give it a like, hit the subscribe button because I post every Monday. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye!